I have here my written tutorial for brushes, and I've decided I'm going to divide this into two parts. We're going to first just learn on how to utilize the brushes that come with Photoshop Elements, and in a second part on another video we're going to work with installing and creating our own brushes. Here I have my Photoshop Elements, and on the toolbar, this is what the brush tool looks like. If you click down on it, it's going to activate the options up here. You can also just hit B on your keyboard, and that's going to activate it if you like to use those keyboard shortcuts. If you click on the drop down arrow next to the thumbnail, it's going to bring up this box. You can see here that I like to grab the corner of this box and resize it fairly large. It can be as large as you want it, so that you can easily see your brushes. There is a flyout arrow right here. If you click on it, in this area here are various versions of ways that you can view your brushes. Text only just gives the name, and you could choose your brush this way. You can have a small or a large list, and this is going to have a thumbnail with the name of the brush next to it, and so you could scroll. There's a bar here that you can scroll up and down the list and easily maybe see you want flowing stars and see what that brush looks like. There is a stroke and a thumbnail view, which is really handy. This is the thumbnail, and for instance, here is the star brush that we were just peeking at, and here is what it would look like if you would drag it across the file. And so you can also choose a brush that way. That is really a handy way. I tend to like just the large thumbnail view. And this is what it looks like. Here is another drop down arrow, and if you click on it, you're going to see that there are various categories of brushes, so there's plenty of brushes in here to choose from. You click on it and you're going to get a different set of brushes, and there are just a wide variety. Here's a little smiley brush, some music notes. How about some dog prints? There are just a wide variety of brushes in here. Here's some square ones, and so you can go through and really have a lot of fun. And under the default brushes are the hard round brushes and the soft round brushes. You will find that you use both of those a lot, and I will share with you the differences between the hard round brush and the soft round brush later. You can see here that the edges here are hard, and here they fade out in the soft round brushes. And so you would just pick a brush and double click on it. Now you can see, I'm going to zoom in, that my brush where my mouse is currently just looks like some crosshairs. If you have your caps lock key on it, it's going to look like that. If your brush is too small for the zoom that you have setting, as in this instance, it's going to look like that. But if I zoom in, you can see the brush a little bit better. I'm going to zoom back out, and you can see it turns into a crosshair again. Remember though, if you toggle your caps lock, here, let me zoom in, and you can see this brush, and if I hit my caps lock, it goes to the crosshair again, and if I hit my caps lock again, it goes to this view. So if you're just stuck in that crosshair mode, remember to hit your caps lock. There are several ways to resize that brush, and here is the section you can do that. You can highlight and manually type in, and you can see now that out on my desktop, as I move my mouse, my brush is bigger. you can click on this drop down menu and move the slider, and you can see that my brush is getting bigger. The circle is bigger. Another way is to hover over the word size, and you're going to see it turns into a double arrow. When you see that double arrow, click down and you can just move your mouse. You have to hold click down on the left and on your mouse and hold it, and just move it back and forth, and you can see you can resize that way. I can even move down here and go back and forth, and you can see the numbers up here in the box changing as I do so. Now I have a rather large brush. However, the way I prefer is to utilize the bracket keys on my keyboard. I'm going to hit one or the other of them, and you can see I prefer to use this because I can see exactly what the brush size is while resizing. When I use this method, I don't get to see what it is until I click off, and I have to go back and forth. So if you use your bracket keys, you can choose exactly the size that you want and while you're resizing. Here is the mode, and under the mode are all the blending modes that you also see when you are over here in the layers palette. If you click here under blending modes, you can see, and so these just the way these blending modes work over here in the layers palette is how they will work on your brushes. I tend to not use the blending modes a whole lot because I can use my brush and draw on a new layer and then just apply that same blending mode here, and this blending mode doesn't make a permanent change to the brushwork, because I can go back in and choose a different one if I want to apply to that whole layer. When you use this, it is permanent as you draw, and so that's why I don't use this very often, but there are reasons to, and so you might want to use that. Here is the opacity of the brush. You can certainly I use this a lot when I'm using the brushes under the eraser tool, but when I'm just drawing with brushes, I don't change the opacity here. I change it for the whole layer over here. But there are various instances, and you may want to change the opacity of the brush. This button, if you set it down, it activates the airbrush, and we're going to go back and play with that in a bit. And this is a setting for using a graphics tablet. This is something separate that you have to actually purchase that will plug into this, so there's no reason to learn about this unless you have a graphics tablet. Now this last box, if you click on it, this is the options, which we're going to go over in detail a little bit later, and I use this quite often. So let's go back. We're going to hit the airbrush and these options here a little bit more, but let's go back into the basics of drawing with the brush. Whatever your foreground color is what color your brush is going to draw in, and so you would pick your foreground color and create a new layer. You really don't want to put your brushwork directly on your background layer, as it won't be easy to delete and start over if you want. And so I've created a new layer, and if I just click once with my mouse, it's going to work like a stamp. And if you click once and hold down with your left mouse and draw, you can see I can draw whatever I want, whatever shape I want. I'm going to create a new layer, and let me show you how you can make straight lines using the brush. If you hold down the shift key, but it's a little bit tricky. You have to learn how to hold it down at the right time. So in this instance, I'm going to click down once with my mouse, and then I'm going to hold down the shift key and draw. And you can see my line is straight, and I could click off on both the mouse and the shift key at the same time. However, if I hold down my shift key and let go of the mouse, and I'm still holding down the shift key, and if I click over here, it's going to draw a straight line from point to point. I'm still holding down my shift key. It's going to draw another line from point to point. And so as long as you have your shift key held down, it's going to do that. And so you might accidentally draw lines like this. I do it often myself because I forget to let go of the shift key. If you want to draw two straight lines, see, I'm going to hold down my shift key and click, well, as long as you have your shift key held down before you, this is hard to explain, before you click with your mouse, it's going to draw from point to point. If I click down with my mouse and then hold my shift key, I'm going to be able to start a new line. And so you just have to be careful when you click down with the shift key. If you continue to hold it down as you draw, it's going to start making lines everywhere. I hope that makes sense. You're just going to have to get in there and play in order to figure out how that shift key works yourself. Let's go on up to the Airbrush tool, and this works just like those airbrush. You'll see them doing airbrushes on t-shirts at fairs and carnivals and such, and it's quite fun. I recommend you get in here and play with it. If I just click down and hold with my mouse, oh, it didn't, is it activated? It doesn't seem to be drawing. Okay, well, I may have to come back. My airbrush is not working like an airbrush, and it's so fun. I don't know quite why. It should be spraying all out everywhere. Maybe if I got a see, I did it right on my new layer. There we go. I got a soft brush, and you can see now it's working. And if I just hold down, you can see it continues to spray out paint. And it just continues to grow. So it doesn't work with a hard brush. So see, I just learned something new. But it is working with this soft brush, and you can see I'm just holding down with my mouse key, and it just continues to spray out, and the circle continues to get larger. And here, if I draw with it, you can see it does look more like an airbrush. And so that can be a lot of fun to play with. There, now you can see how it works. So it doesn't work with a hard brush. You have to use a soft brush. And you can see I'm just holding down, and that continues just to get larger. And that's quite fun to play with. Get me some new layers. I keep making new layers to play with. Let's go on to the options, which is this little brush tool. And each of the brushes come preset with their own options, but you can change them. For instance, we're going to start with the fading, and let's go back to this tutorial because this has some great examples and I want to go ahead and follow along with it. Here's some examples. The fade slider changes how long it takes to run out of paint, and so you can imagine that these are actually real brushes, like you are using a paintbrush on a piece of paper, and if you load that paintbrush up with a lot of paint and then drag it across the page, where you first hit with the brush, it's going to have a lot of paint in that area, and as you can relate to this as you paint along a wall, and as you continue to paint, the brush runs out of paint, and so then it becomes more faded. And so we can go in here and change the fade of a brush, and if you put it up really high, and then let me make my brush smaller, and you can see, let's go back to using a hard brush for this, and I'm going to change the fade on it, and you can see then, well, you should be able to see, let's zoom all the way out, and it should be fading as you get as you run out of paint, but it doesn't seem to be working. I got a sample to work for my tutorial. Let's move down to the other end. It just doesn't seem to be fading. I'm not having very much luck with my tutorial today, but it should fade out as in the sample on my tutorial. Well, that's pretty embarrassing that that did not work. The next one is hue jitter, and you can see here what happens with hue jitter in my sample. Basically, this is the one time the setting is affected by the foreground and the background color, and so it's going to adjust how it changes between the foreground and the background color. And so let's change the hue jitter way up, and you can see I have blue and a tan in my background, and there you can see how the two colors are mixed as I draw. If I change the hue jitter back, you can see it makes a difference and doesn't bring in as much as of the background color, and I'm glad that one worked. The hardness slider changes how sharp or fuzzy a brush is. Now this is where you can actually take a hard brush and change it into a soft brush. Hard brushes have a setting of 100, and soft brushes can have a setting all the way down to 0. Let's make a new layer, and you'll see here I chose a hard brush, and the hardness is set on 100, and so when I draw with it, let's change that hue jitter back to 0, but when I draw with it, you can see it's a hard brush, and if I want to make a soft brush out of it, I can just move that hardness all the way down, and you can see now it's the same as if I would have gone up here and chose a soft brush. So you can make any hard brush into a soft brush just by changing that setting. And the next one is the scatter slider. It changes how random the brushes throw out. Let's just go in and do it. Create a new layer. And right now the scatter is on 0, so it's not going to scatter my dots at all. But let's change that scatter all the way up, and you can see it just throws the dots randomly about the page everywhere, and so that can be kind of fun to play with at times. And now the next one is turning your brush. And this one I use all the time. If you would find possibly, let's find a different brush that might work good with grunge, I think this thick heavy brush you can see is oblong, and so if I were to be grunging out the outer edge, of course I'd use a straight line. That brush is going to look different on that edge than it does here. You can see it's a lot thicker here. And so if I want the brush to work the same on this edge as it does this edge, I'm going to want to turn my brush. And so you can just grab this, click right down in the middle of it, and turn the angle of the brush, and now you can see it's much thinner, just like it is on this edge. And so maybe you want to use it actually turned it so when I do it on this, it acts as it did on the first time through up here. And so if you have a brush, grunge brushes are often oblong like that, and in order to make the edges look the same, you're going to have to turn that brush. And so you can turn it in any direction you want. Of course, you can manually set it here. And then here is the roundness, which also changes it. You can see in the preview now the brush is even more oblong. You can see how it changed the shape of it here and how that affects that. And so did we cover everything? I think we missed this spacing one. Oh yes, spacing is a lot of fun. Let's create another new layer and go back to just the standard hard brush. And now when I change the spacing, I want you to watch the thumbnail up here to see how it looks different. And as I move the spacing, you can see it moves how far apart the brush is. See right here about this setting, you can see I've got the dots are pretty far apart, and so then when I go ahead and I draw, I can get a straight line of dots, and I like using that a lot on my layouts to just fill in areas by putting a row of dots. If I go in here and I move them even farther apart and I draw my line, you can see they're even farther apart than before. And so I love using that technique and spacing a hard brush out to make a line of dots to fill in some blank area of my layout. I do that often. And so I think I've covered all the basics of using a brush. The next section is going to be on loading brushes and creating brushes, and we're going to cover all of that in the next tutorial because this one's already about 25 minutes long. And so I hope you've learned a lot about the basics of using the brush, and please do ask questions if you have any questions, if there's something I didn't cover. And get out there and just draw and play and have fun, because it's a lot of fun to play.